listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins #1. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins #1.
Dolphins fans, and how are you today? And thank you for listening to DolphinsTalk.com daily. I am your host, Tom Ernestine. On today's show, we are going to discuss the announcement on Monday that Tim Bowens is going into the Ring of Honor. It used to be called the Honor Roll, but they changed it to the Ring of Honor. The first official depth chart has been released. I'm going to give you my thoughts on what we're currently seeing on the depth chart and why it's not time to panic just yet, based on that initial depth chart. And joint practices are firing up on Tuesday with the Atlanta Falcons in town in Miami Gardens as they gear up for their first preseason game on Friday night from Hard Rock Stadium. But before we get into any of that, big shout out to Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for your Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Miami Hurricanes, your Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, and all the professional and college teams in South Florida. If you're looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team, check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. It is located at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida. And Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? There's no worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship it to you, international fans too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com, Caneswear.com. And a big shout out to everybody listening over at FinHeaven.com, the largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet. And shout out to everyone over at the Facebook group, I Am a Miami Dolphins Fan. If you're on Facebook, go check out that page and connect with other Miami Dolphins fans. All right, let's get into today's show. Tim Bowens is being inducted into the Ring of Honor for the Miami Dolphins. That is going to take place on October 27th at halftime against the Arizona Cardinals. And I also believe that is FanFest weekend, if I am not mistaken. So be prepared if you are heading to Miami Gardens for the game on October 27th. It is Tim Bowens' induction. A couple tidbits on Tim Bowens. He did spend his entire playing career with the Miami Dolphins, a full 11 seasons from 1994 to 2004. He played in 157 games and started 155 in his last season in 2004. Only played, I believe, 2 or 3 games due to injury. He had a career of 414 combined tackles, 26 tackles for loss, 22 sacks, 9 forced fumbles, and an interception. He was named in 1994 to the AP Defensive Rookie of the Year team, as well as the 1994 NFL All-Rookie team, and he also had 2 Pro Bowl appearances. Congratulations to Tim Bowens. And if you are young and have not seen Tim Bowens play, he was a very integral part of the success on that defensive line, helping the Dolphins, like Trace Armstrong, for instance, comes to mind. And, of course, the guy playing behind him, Zach Thomas, who gave big kudos to Tim Bowens and the announcement that Tim Bowens was being inducted into the Miami Dolphins Ring of Honor. Again, that will take place October 27th at halftime against the Arizona Cardinals, which Mike, Oliva, and myself will actually be attending that game and that weekend. So hope to see some faces while we're there. All right, the first official depth chart has been released. You can check that out all over social media. If you're not on social media, just head over to MiamiDolphins.com. They have the posted current depth chart. there are some interesting tidbits and there are some caveats to this depth chart, and we're going to get into that right now. First, we're going to talk about the starting guards currently are locked up with Robert Jones starting on the left side and Liam Eichenberg starting at right guard. All right, so there's a caveat here with this one, and the first one is Isaiah Wynn is still currently on PUP. Mike McDaniel stated that there is no timeline on return. He also said there's no timeline on return, and Cam Smith is likely to practice this potentially week and also play in the preseason game on Friday. So Mike McDaniel, even though it is the preseason, he does not tip his hand. He does not give anybody an edge, no matter what, when it comes to the players being injured. Isaiah Wynn likely will slot back at left guard, and Robert Jones will kick to right guard. The Dolphins also, in my opinion, they have almost $36 million in cap space. We'll actually talk about that at the end of the show. But they have to get creative, in my opinion, and check the guard market as soon as possible to see who could be available and what it might take to get that said player. But they definitely need to be calling around because the interior of this offensive line has been worrisome through a majority of the first 10 days of practice. If you haven't heard the rundown of practice, Mike Oliva did another post-practice recap where he broke down some of the news and notes from the feet on the ground there from the local beat reporters and gave his opinions on it. So if you haven't checked that out, go check out Mike's show from Monday. Moving from guard to running back. The one thing that really caught my attention is Jaylen Wright, the rookie out of Tennessee, is currently listed 5th or 6th on the depth chart. And knowing the Dolphins, they're probably going to roster 4 backs. They did last year for a good portion of the season with Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, Jeff Wilson, and Savon Ahmed. When Chris Brooks went down, they carried 4 on the roster. So to see Jaylen Wright 5th or 6th on the depth chart is eye-popping. For number one, and you could take it with a grain of salt or however it is you want to take it, but Jaylen Wright has been explosive in camp. He's made a lot of big plays. He is a very intense runner. He's a guy that will not wait for anything to develop. He is going to go to his target, and if he can bust through, obviously that guy's going to make a big gain. I would be stunned, floored, mind you, if Jaylen Wright is not running back 3 on the depth chart, or at bare minimum a running back 4 on the depth chart when the regular season starts. I have him ahead of Jeff Wilson Jr., Savon Ahmed, and Chris Brooks by the time week 1 rolls around. Another one that caught my attention on the offensive side is the wide receiver group. We know number 1 and 2 is Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle. But currently listed 3 and 4 on the depth chart is River Craycraft and Braxton Berrios. Now, Odell Beckham currently will not show on the depth chart because he is on PUP. That will likely change over the next week or two as they start ramping him up towards week 1. So one of those guys will slide out of that spot. But Willie Snead currently is slotted at 5. Eric Izakama, Braylon Sanders, and Malik Washington all need to have a big week of practice and the preseason game on Friday to make any sort of headway of potentially cracking this roster. Malik Washington, he has been struggling a little bit here through training camp. Not entirely sure he will make the 53 just yet. They may hope to get him on the practice squad if they decide to cut him. But he's got to make some headway. Also, the experiment with Eric Izakama might be coming to an end. Who knows? But right now he is injured, and he's also listed as 6th on the depth chart, so he's got an uphill battle. If you think I was done with the offense, I'm not. The tight end position also really caught my attention. Tanner Conner is listed 5th. Durham Smythe surprisingly listed 1st over Jonnu Smith. Then you have Julian Hill. You have Jody Fortson, and then Tanner Conner showing at 5. And Connor is having a very good camp based on all reports. And the fact that he is showing 5th right now on the depth chart is pretty eye-opening. But we still have 3 more weeks of full-on training camp and preseason games starting on Friday, of course, or starting Tuesday, of course, when it comes to these practices, because they have joint practices all the way through the preseason. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins look to move a guy like Durham Smythe or a guy like Julian Hill. And Jason Sarney here from Dolphins Talk actually made a great point that the Dolphins, based on how the tight ends have been working in camp, they have a good amount of guys that can play. Now, I wouldn't see Julian Hill as a target. John O. Smith is not a target to get traded, but Durham Smythe might be. In addition to that, there's potential for Julian Hill, but Jody Fortson, no, he's not getting traded. And Tanner Connor, I don't know if they want to trade him, but he has been showing out in camp. If he has a really strong week, as Sarney alluded to, could be trade potential or trade bait for a team that's looking for tight end depth. Sans the Rams last year with Jalen Ramsey. The Dolphins had, some potential there at tight end, and they made him available in trade to get Jalen Ramsey. And that could be for all offensive line. So I'm on board with what Jason Sarney said. I believe it was last week. But it's going to be a very interesting battle over the next 3 weeks with preseason on who snags those jobs. Is there going to be potential movement in regards of trade for a team that may end up losing a tight end through the course that could have been a depth guy, number 2 or number 3 tight end on the roster? Dolphins have legitimately 5 guys that could play some sort of role in this offense and could end up somewhere else before cuts really get going. The linebacking unit also caught my attention. Obviously, no Chubb or Phillips. They're both on PUP. And it does show that there is some depth lacking. Now, Quentin Bell, who's had a very good camp, he had the orange jersey on Monday. He's currently the starter listed opposite Emmanuel Ogbah, who just signed a couple weeks ago and back in the fold. But obviously, once Phillips and Chubb return, that likely pushes some guys like Vandenberg and Channing Tindall off the roster, or at least on the bubble. But what that also will do is provide depth. So a guy like Emmanuel Ogbah goes to the bench. A guy like Quentin Bell goes to the bench. Those guys are rotational guys at that point behind Chubb and Phillips. But regarding Phillips and Chubb, again, no one really knows when they will return. Although, in my opinion, at least Phillips looks closer, and I think he's going to come off PUP over the next 2 to 3 weeks. I don't believe he will start the season on PUP. I believe he will be active, but I also believe they're going to have him on a snap count or just have him as inactive maybe for the first couple games of the season, but we will find that out here over the next few weeks. At cornerback, Ethan Bonner caught my attention as he is locked in at the 3-4 spot at corner. He is backing up Jalen Ramsey currently on the depth chart. He's made some really nice highlight plays with some of the interceptions, and he's been covering Tyreek Hill fairly well. And he has absolutely ridiculous closing speed. Him and Cam Smith right now, again, locked in 3-4 as those outside corners. They're going to get some extended looks, and look for those looks to start on Friday against the Atlanta Falcons. The last spot on the depth chart that kind of caught my attention is the return game. The guys on the depth chart shows Braxton Berrios listed as the first kick returner, first punt returner. Now, this new kickoff rule has some emphasis that there is potential for returns. And Berrios, as solid as he was, because he did not drop any of the kicks last year and did not turn it over, I want someone with speed back there. And yes, I see Devon Achane listed as number 2, but that's not a guy you want to mess around with on returns because he's such a vital piece of the offense. Where Berrios is more of your, number 5, maybe number 6 wide receiver who's going to come in certain situations. Achane is far more important. So seeing him listed number 2, okay, I get it. They want to have someone with speed back there. I just can't fathom the thought that Achane's going to return, but I want someone with speed. I want someone that's got some juice to return these kicks, because if Danny Crossman, God willing, can figure out how to coach special teams this year in regards to their coverages and their contains on returns, this is going to be a very strong unit because of the speed. It's just who is going to be the guy, and right now it's Braxton Berrios. We'll have to see how that goes through the preseason. Maybe someone here further on the depth chart can make a move into that return spot. Last but not least, the joint practices with Atlanta, again, starts on Tuesday morning. From a weather perspective, I will make note, there is a chance of storms in the morning, over 60% chance, so there is a strong possibility that the practice could be moved indoors for a portion of that practice, if not all of the practice. So stay tuned on that. If you are potentially attending practice, just be on the lookout and watch the weather. And also watch for the updates from the Dolphins. They did this on Saturday and said due to inclement weather on Friday night for Saturday morning, they canceled the practice at Hard Rock Stadium for fans to attend the scrimmage. However, it didn't even rain, so take it with a grain of salt. Here are the things I'm looking to watch for in those joint practices. I love to see how the Dolphins' edge rushers, as it is today, perform against the Atlanta Falcons starting offensive line. It is a solid unit for Atlanta, and I'd like to see how Chop Robinson does against a guy like Jake Matthews, who's a very good left tackle. I want to see if the Dolphins' offensive line can hold up in pass protection especially. Can they open the run lanes? Can they protect Tua? Obviously, the quarterbacks are not getting hit in these practices. They're going to have the red jerseys on. There's no contact there. I would assume that there's going to be at least tops on in regards to the pads, at least tops on for these guys in practice tomorrow. I don't know if they're going to be wearing the leg pads or not, so it may not be tackle drills for these teams. They're probably just going to do more of a walkthrough practices against each other and have no tackling involved. And how much work is the starting offense going to get in the first preseason game? I don't foresee Tua really taking a ton of snaps against Atlanta. I would think that we see him more in the second preseason game, I believe against Washington the next week. I think that's where he'll get a bulk of his work in. And then, of course, the final one against Tampa, which will be on the road. But, again, joint practices. So we have a very interesting week. Make sure you're following Dolphins Talk for all the latest news and updates. We are going to have a plethora of shows, obviously practice recap shows, a brand new show starting on Tuesday night with the very talented Marissa Marino, joined by Jason Sarney for a show tomorrow night talking Dolphins training camp and everything else in the world of the Miami Dolphins. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel at Dolphins Talk to be alerted when we go live, and then make sure you smash that like button on YouTube. It would be greatly appreciated. Leading up to the game on Friday, Mike and Ian, Big E, will likely be on Wednesday. Josh and Aaron, same old Dolphin show, will be on also this week. And then Friday, we will have our first preseason game. And most likely we'll have some form of a post-game wrap-up show. Not our normal, but we're going to make some observations, Mike Leva and myself, to talk about the preseason game and how it went for your Miami Dolphins. Everyone, even if you are not religious, I'm not really religious, just pray that these players in these joint practices get out of this unscathed. No major injuries can occur. Everybody stays healthy and get healthy for week one. That's the most important thing out of these joint practices and these preseason games. Again, don't mean anything other than getting work in for a little bit of the starters and then to find your depth and role players in these games. So you can follow me on X or Twitter, whatever we're calling it this week, at DolphinsTalk Tom. Again, the main account at DolphinsTalk. And we look forward to talking to you again here after a while. Everybody enjoy your Tuesday. Fins up. Let's go.
Thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast. Be sure to visit DolphinsTalk.com every day for all of your latest Miami Dolphins news.